back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Member Cuzzy, sitting here with Cameron Selby, and today we're going to do our part 2 of our wide receiver rankings for fantasy football. Go watch part 1 if you haven't seen it yet, and go check out our 60 to 28 receivers. But yeah, we're going to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, essentially this is a top 25 receiver ranking. There's a couple more that we added to the 4th tier that we wanted to talk about. We'll just get right into it. So we're going to start off the board. George Pickens, wide receiver 27, Pittsburgh. One of the biggest improvements in terms of quarterback situation of any team. Whatever you want to say about Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, it doesn't matter. It's way better than Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph.
Absolutely.
Point blank, simple. And then also the target hog. We talked about in our previous video how Deontay Johnson was just a lock for 110 to 130 targets over the last 4 years. And when he was healthy, he's gone, and they replaced him with a rookie, low volume rookie Roman Wilson, and then guys like Calvin Austin and retread receivers like Van Jefferson are the only guys they really have.
Pat Freiermuth.
And then also it's low volume passing offense anyways. Like last year's wide receiver 2 for Atlanta, who was it? Matt Collins?
Yeah.
I mean,
he was the one we were drafting.
Either way, he didn't even have 500 yards. So, I don't even know if there's a second receiver that can produce in here. But guess what? At least one can, and his name is George Pickens. And what do you want to say about the talent remains to be seen. But he's just by default, in a really good situation, and he's supposed to be in a spot where they should be throwing a lot more, even despite bringing in Arthur Smith.
Well, I think the weird thing about George Pickens and why people get turned off by him is because of his attitude. And I think an effort. And going into a running offense, and if he don't block, is he going to be on the field? Mm-hmm. Are they going to keep him on the field? That's my biggest concern. Because as a coach, you run the ball so much, you have to have your guys blocking. I know Drake London didn't like it. I know Kyle Pitts didn't necessarily like it. That's why Johnny Smith was on the field probably, They might just say, hey, George, you're not going to play because you won't block. And that worries me, if anything. Now, realistically, if they put their best players on the field, George Pickens is getting 100-plus targets, no problem. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I'm at. But Amari Cooper, he's 2 spots differential, right where he's supposed to be. And I think he's actually climbing on our list for the most part. He's kind of one of those guys that we're excited about, but the quarterback situation is just a little bit interesting, and we want to make sure that we're comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, he's been another Mr. Consistency. I mean, since he kind of underwhelmed in Oakland when he was there, when they were the Oakland Raiders, but still, over 1,000 yards in 2 of his 3 full seasons, and then he had 1,000 total yards when he was traded in between the Dallas and Oakland year. You just, you can't really go wrong. And he's a good red zone threat. He's got 8 to 10 touchdown upside. And, target-wise, he's had over 105 targets in the last 5 years.
Feels pretty safe.
Yeah, it feels pretty safe. And then also, Cleveland has the number 1 strength of schedule in terms of wide receiver matchups. That's in spite of having the worst strength of schedule. Mm-hmm. It sounds weird that correlates, but it kind of does because, on top of having the worst strength of schedule, what does that mean? You're probably going to be trailing more than you think.
Right.
And with that being said, if there's good matchups in addition to that, that just means that there's more opportunities to succeed. He really kind of came into his own last year, late in the year when Joe Flacco took over, because after Deshaun, he was kind of going in and out of the lineup with various injuries. Then P.J. Walker came in, and who's the other guy? Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yeah.
Low volume guys that you don't expect to just throw for 40 times a game. But then Joe Flacco that's sitting on the couch is just like, I got nothing to lose. Let me just chunk it about 60 times a game. Geez, and then he just brought it out of the dead with Amari Cooper and Njoku. Like we said in our tight end video, last 6 weeks of the year, David Njoku was tight end 1. Overall, Cooper, he was wide receiver 17, very reliable and way higher than our ranking here. And then if you want to talk about the last 6 weeks of the season, the same sample size, obviously wide receiver 16 as well. There was a month gap where he just killed it. He also had a game in the fantasy postseason where he had 53 fantasy points.
Right, that was crazy.
So he probably helped some people win their leagues, and he was a low-end receiver because the unknown with the quarterback situation, and his ADP didn't really change that much. So really, we're more than fine with him. He has the upside to be even higher than our ranking. It's just the meshing with Deshaun hasn't been enough to warrant being a top 20 receiver, because most of his success has been when Deshaun's been off the field since he's been included.
Right, and so with that 53 points, I think that probably pushed him up 5-6 spots. But for me personally, I think, like we talked about, I think he's, no matter what, is between, if he's healthy, between wide receiver 20 and wide receiver 30. Mm-hmm. The capped upside part of this slide is there, because I don't see him being above wide receiver 20 truly, because look at the guys that he would have to compete with up there, and so that's kind of where I put him. But if you want a safe player, Mark Cooper's a guy that you can get in the 5th round and be in, or I guess 4th to 5th round right now, and feel pretty safe, getting a guy that you're comfortable with,
Right.
And then one of our favorite guys to draft right now is Keenan Allen, behind both Amari Cooper and George Pickens in ADP. And we have him higher than that. We just don't see that there's such a big difference between DJ Moore and Keenan Allen's production this year. I don't, personally, you texted me, you were like, where should Keenan Allen and DJ Moore be? And I was like, well, they should probably be, both wide receiver 2s. And you were like, yeah, that's what I think. And I'm like, okay, so what's the problem? And you're like, well, Keenan Allen's 11 spots different. And I was like, whoa, like how? And so we're actually higher on both DJ Moore and Keenan Allen in this rankings, but it's like, we thought that they should be closer together. We think Keenan Allen is, he was wide receiver 6 last year. He's
6 overall and 3rd in terms of points per game.
Yeah.
21 and a half.
He's a great target guy. He's PPR monster. Just bet on talent.
Yeah, I mean, when his ups, obviously it's Justin Herbert. Caleb Williams is arguably the better talent, right? So since Justin Herbert has came in, he's 147 targets, 157. He had a down year when he had to miss some games due to injury, but he still had 89 targets in 10 games, and then 150 last year.
Yep.
I mean, he's just consistently I'm so happy he overcame. He had a couple of significant injuries early in his career, and then really he's been durable since then. He's really only had two true injuries, significant injuries. And then he started to kind of bring up his touchdown production a little bit. Yeah, I mean, he's as safe as it gets. And he's why Roma Dunze is so low, is because he's just a target king. And when you're a rookie, you're not going to take as many chances of just throwing deep balls. And that's what DJ Moore is known for.
Right.
Keenan Allen's known for moving the chains and 3rd and 7s and 10, 11 targets a game. And we moved him down a little bit because I got a little too excited. But, I mean, right now we have him much higher than consensus. And
right.
We're getting a ton of him as our wide receiver 4. And even as a wide receiver 3, I feel very, very good about it.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I said he should be a wide receiver 2, and then I looked at the names. I'm like, yeah, he's probably in the 22 to 24 range. And, well, he's at 25, so he's a little bit behind that. But, shoot, that's right where he should be, I feel like. And then we have the opposite in Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle's negatively differential. He's got 5 spots, and that's a lot when you get to the top of this board.
It's starting to be more because he's starting to rise into the second rounds again. Last year he was like a late second round pick, and we got some shares of him because we were like, who's going to lead the league in passing yards? Well, he did, and Jalen wasn't a huge part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
He still got his 1,000 yards, but touchdowns when he gets to this range. And I mean, I think last year he had 4, and that was a massive drop off after having. I think he had 7 total his rookie year. He had 7 and then 8. And so we were like, okay, he had 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. Let's go. And then he kind of drops down to 1,004. And so to me, if he is a true top 5 upside wide receiver, if Tyreek goes down. But with Tyreek in the fold, I just think his upside's capped.
Right.
And I don't think he'll consistently put up those 30-point weeks that I think other people in this range can.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's like we had him on our Biggest Losers video. We had like it felt like all the Miami players were on our Biggest Losers video because they have a tough schedule and to end the year. And it's like, well, Jalen Waddle's not the number one option. Tua, of course, can do it with two guys. That's not a problem. But it's like, can Jalen Waddle like overcome the touchdown issues? Because the running backs are still going to get fed. They're still going to score touchdowns, but the running backs are getting the ball. So it's like Jalen Waddle just kind of feels a 20 to 20 yard line on both sides of the ball. That's where he's in. And after that, he's not getting the red zone targets at all.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this time it's about value and where you can pick it up. We think that Jalen Waddle has slightly more upside than Keenan Allen, but guess what? One is going in the second, one you can get maybe in the sixth. So is it a 4-round difference between the two? I don't think so.
Right.
But we're here, and he could probably rise up. We'll also have to see with the San Francisco players what will happen with them and if they'll continue to stay on the same team. But really, I think he is the second highest wide receiver 2 in our rankings. Very commendable, very respectable. I just don't think the consistency is there, and we'll just kind of see if he can get back to that 1,300-yard season. But again, that's going to be without Tyreek Hill in the fold, not with them.
Right. And then Deebo Samuel, we just said about the San Francisco issue. Brandon Ayuk might not be there. And if Brandon Ayuk's not there, this list will change.
Like and he's going way up.
Yeah.
He's basically going where Ayuk is going, and Ayuk is probably going to go down. Well, depending on where he goes. He'll probably flop with them.
And wherever he goes, those players are going down. I've seen Pittsburgh. George Pickens will not be at 27 if that happens.
And then Washington's another one. That'll be interesting, but John Dotson's just out of our player pool.
Terry McLaurin drops. It's like, so depending on that situation, obviously that'll change where we have these guys going, but Deebo is the coolest receiver and one of the coolest receivers in my book. Played running back at times. You get the little bit of upside there, especially if Christian McCaffrey goes down, catches the ball, and just takes off. It's just sometimes he just teleports to the end zone. It's awesome. He's the yak guy, and you love watching him play.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, with him, it's his 2021 season was something else. I think he was wide receiver 2 or 3 overall that season when he had 1,400 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns rushing as well. He still has some rushing production. It's dropped off a little bit. The problem is just if you're a true receiver and you're 4 of your first 5 years, you're getting less than 900 yards. It's hard to justify being a mid-second round pick, which is where he's at. And similar to Jalen Waddle, we like him, but is he that big of a difference between Keenan Allen or other guys on this list, Zay Flowers or DK or Cooper or Pittman? So I just don't know. He's a difficult player to rank. I am consistently lower on him, but again, on a week-to-week basis, he can score the 30 points. Like we in weekly lineups, we'll pick him as targets, and he'll work out and make us money, and it's awesome. But just season long, there's highs and lows, there's peaks and valleys, and he also has dealt with injuries. And again, one is going to be gone at some point between him and Ayuk. I thought it would be Deebo because of the durability. He's not a traditional receiver. You have a Christian McCaffrey, which is basically what, if they're smart with Christian McCaffrey, he could be an outlier of a running back that the cursed 30-year-old range once if he transitions to more of a receiver.
Right, of course.
And then has some carries along the way, you can play until he's 35.
Yeah.
But, which is a disadvantage of what Deebo is. I don't expect Deebo to be there forever, but we'll just kind of see because I think Brandon Ayuk can probably get more value from a trade perspective. Yes. So if that happens, again, in the short term, Deebo, his value goes way up, but I think it'll be contingent on what happens with Brandon Ayuk.
Well, it's not just that, too. The money issue in San Francisco is just a thing for every player that's there.
Yeah, it's their last true year before really they have to make some tough decisions.
Mm-hmm. And then Zay Flowers, the number 1 receiver for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. I think that, Zay's kind of separated himself as the number 1 Mark Andrews, of course, is the only person that challenges him for targets. Mark Andrews, though, scores touchdowns. Zay Flowers has a little bit, I think, more of an issue. Sorry. Zay Flowers has more of an issue doing that part of the game because he doesn't necessarily run those types of routes. He will break one off every once in a while, but he fits the 140 target type of player. They don't throw the ball very much. And I really like Zay Flowers, but it's what he can do with the ball after he catches it more so than what he does, with target wise, the amount of targets and the volume.
Yeah, I mean, with Zay, he outperformed my expectations from him last year. I mean, he played very well, especially down the stretch. And, if he holds on to the ball as he crosses the pylon in the AFC title game, be a very, very different game because they were just looking for a spark.
Mm-hmm.
And, he has the big play, and then the very after that, about to score a touchdown, get back in the game, and all of a sudden turnover, and Kansas City still up 2 scores.
Right.
So, and I think he's the type of player that can learn from that and use that as motivation, not just kind of, diva out. And
yeah, he was a rookie, right?
Yeah, he was a rookie, and I think he took it well, and I expect him to motivate himself to, outperform that. My thing with Lamar Jackson is he just doesn't really produce 1,000-yard receivers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his best receiver has been Mark Andrews for most of the time when he's been healthy, and that's why we like him so much. So I think it'll just kind of depend on his touchdown production. Last year,
6.
Yeah, I think he had 6, but then he had some in the postseason as well.
Yeah, well, with Zay,
he had 8.
He was a really.
Sorry. Yeah, he actually had 5 touchdowns.
Oh, 5.
But,
okay. He was a solid pickup though on the waiver wire for most teams.
Yeah,
I mean, he was a guy that out of all the rookies last year, he performed better than he had the highest production of all of them. Now, not saying there's going to be some sort of sophomore slump or something, but he just has to find a way. He will be targeted. He will be the number one guy. Defenses will think about him a lot more. Just they has to know that, it's a little different world when you come in and you're the alpha.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, you were correct. He had 6 touchdowns. I had it filtered to just the final 6 weeks, which he had 5 of his touchdowns in the final 6 weeks. So that's why he jumped up so much.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of right in the middle of this range, and that's kind of where he's at.
What did he finish as last year?
Wide receiver 25.
Okay. Yeah, he's 22.
Very, very fine.
Yeah.
We expect him to build on that. Very little competition for targets. His 2 competitions for targets are both tight ends. So one of them, I don't expect both of them to be fantasy relevant at the same time consistently. So it's really just him and Mark for the time being. And, they bring in Derrick Henry, who's not a target hog whatsoever. And Lamar doesn't target running backs anyways. So it's just opportunities there. It's a good offense. It's one Super Bowl contender. Lots of light there.
They're going to have to throw the ball. Someone has to catch it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd expect it to be Zay and Mark Andrews. And then DK Metcalf, the highest of the Seattle grouping. All 3 of the main ones are on this list. And DK just takes another step forward. He's gotten his big contract now. He's just a guy that, how do I put this? Because we're not, talent-wise, we're not as high on DK because he only runs a few different kinds of routes. But if he catches the ball on those routes, he's going to score touchdowns. He's going to do those things. He's the red zone guy. So talent doesn't always matter when you're 6'3" and you're massive and you just jump up and catch the ball over everybody else. So DK is an interesting player, but I think he fits in this range just because I think he's safer than the other guys, but I don't think that the capped upside on him is that I just don't think he's ever going to be a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I mean, with his volume so far, he's never not had 100 targets in a season. In his last 4 of true volume, he's got 129, 129, 141, and then last year 119. Problem is he's not catching a lot of those. Like his highest catch percentage is 64%.
Yeah.
The thing that kind of saves that is he's a really good red zone threat.
Right.
Which basically out of this tier, he is by far the safest bet to go double-digit receiving touchdowns.
Yeah.
And that's very plausible with a more pass-friendly offense. We like both him and Jackson. Thing is, he's third-round pick right now. So Big difference in ADP. I think they're kind of closer to where they're both going to contend to be wide receiver 2s. He's probably going to finish better than JSN. But again, if he finishes as wide receiver 17 and he's drafted as wide receiver 20, that's fine and dandy. But if JSN is wide receiver 25 and he is wide receiver 45 as an ADP, like it's a massive difference. And DK is not going to be winning you or getting you into the playoffs in these best ball drafts at that production compared to JSN, who you got wide receiver 3 production as a wide receiver 5.
Right. And I have, just for disclaimer, I have 0 DK Metcalf because he goes in the same range as Cooper Kupp, Michael Pittman Jr., Stephon Diggs.
Yeah. I mean, so the problem is that in these best ball drafts that we've been doing, usually you want to single or double stack your quarterback.
And you can't with DK.
And with whoever you go with Seattle, and I've said before, whoever it is between Geno and Sam Howell should still produce numbers for both of them and even Tyler Lockett. The problem is that you have to, at minimum, go 3 quarterbacks because I don't trust, even if I go Josh Allen, I don't trust my quarterback, just a quarterback 2, just to be Geno Smith.
Right.
So you have to go the 3 quarterback route. If you do, that's fine. But you have to decide way earlier than that if you're going that route. Whereas, like, really, when I go 3 quarterbacks in these drafts, it's like, oh, man, Dak went early. Jordan Love's gone already. And then my quarterback 1's Jared Goff. And it's like, I don't love that. And so I'm trying to get a really strong QB2. And, I have to go with Stafford, who has no rushing upside.
Right.
And it's like, I should probably get somebody else as well.
Justin Fields. Go with Justin Fields.
That's like halfway into the draft.
Right.
At this point, you'll already have 2 Seattle players. So you would have already made that decision. You want to do that? Cool. 3 quarterback can definitely serve you well, especially last year when there was so many injuries. But that's just kind of the thing. Maybe since I have so much JSN, I'll kind of even it out a little bit by taking some more shares of DK. Because it's not like he's being overdrafted. He's just kind of right. He's exactly where he's going. Of course, just where we have him.
And then Cooper Kupp, he had his injury this last year. Puka came out of nowhere and exploded. And then Cooper Kupp came back and wasn't necessarily very good. Now, that could have been a lingering injury.
Hamstring injuries is one of those that it's going to be a deal all season.
Difficult. But so he could come back and just be a top 10 receiver. He actually, to me, has the highest upside of this group, but also possibly the lowest downside, right? Out of all these guys. So I think he's, ranked perfectly for what he is. And if he does explode, you're going to be really happy getting, 20% of him, 15% of him in best ball. But he is going around Stephon Diggs, and we like getting Stephon Diggs, and Michael Pittman's behind him. And, who else is up there? Let's see. Keenan Allen's in the 50s, all these things that we've been talking about. Zay Flowers is right behind him. It's like, you're not just going to get Cooper Kupp in that range. There's other guys that you can like.
Yeah, with him, I think it's a little bit more, now that Puka kind of broke out, and I don't expect the exact same production that he got. If he did, it's there. And
reasonable.
If you were to tell me the exact stat line of their wide receiver 1 this year, I think it's more likely that line is Puka's and not Cooper Kupp's. But he's still going to have those stretches where he just goes off because Matthew Stafford, again, has just produced so many fantasy relevant players, especially at wide receiver over the last long time that he's been playing football. I mean, last year with Cooper Kupp, as soon as he got back from injury, the first game, 8 for 118. And then the very next game, 7 for 148 and 1. And then he started to tail off again. But then at the very end of the season, 8 for 111 and a tug. 8 for 111 and a tug. 12 targets. Like, he will get the same type of production and upside that he did in 2021. It just won't be every single game throughout the year.
Right.
Last year, he was a massive bust based on where he went in ADP. And essentially, if you took him, like, it didn't pan out. But at this point now, he's going the late 3rd, early 4th.
Right.
We're targeting receivers early, and at that point, it's more often than not, he's going to be a wide receiver 3 for your team and not a wide receiver 2. So if you're getting the occasional 150 as a wide receiver 3, like sign me up. But the thing is, I think with him, to kind of even out the risk of him is having a stronger depth. I don't think you can go like compared to if you drafted somebody like a Zay Flowers or a Debo or a Keenan Allen as your wide receiver 3. I think you can get away with getting 6 receivers in a best ball draft.
Right.
Because you just went so top heavy so early. But with him, I don't feel comfortable just like, oh, we're going 3 receivers early, and then we're just going to wait.
Right.
And then our wide receiver 4 is like Curtis Samuel. Like, I think that's too big of a gap, whereas I think some of these other guys, you can get away with that kind of strategy.
For sure. And then Michael Pittman Jr., we've talked about him a lot because we're not sure it's a low-volume offense, but he is the guy. The touchdowns, he's not really a touchdown guy. He's like a 12-yard route runner, and then he falls down, no yak. He's here because he can get 150 targets.
Yeah.
That's why he's here. 6 touchdowns and 150 targets. And you're not mad about it if he – how do I put this? Anthony Richardson is a complete wild card.
Yes.
So that makes Michael Pittman Jr. a complete wild card. And
he's being drafted like he's not.
Right. So is Anthony Richardson. Everybody believes that they are there. They're ready to go.
I saw like a debate today where somebody was saying that Anthony Richardson, like somebody called him unproven. He like laughed at it and was justifying. It's like you're saying somebody's not unproven because he had 2 good fantasy games.
Fantasy does not make.
It doesn't matter. Even if you're talking fantasy,
too.
because he's the perfect. Him and Justin Fields are a perfect example of like just because you're talented at running the football and doesn't mean you're an elite quarterback.
Right.
But if you're just talking from a fantasy perspective, how do you know it's a sure thing from a 2-game sample size? You don't, because he got knocked out of 50% of his games. Being a big burly dude, he's not Bryce Young getting knocked out and it's just like, oh, he's small.
Right.
Like, no, he's yoked and he's still getting knocked out
because everybody else is also yoked. Just that big.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he's never been a high volume passer. And Michael Pittman, like you said, not a yak guy. He had less than 11 yards a catch in each of the last 2 seasons. One of the seasons was less than 10. You don't see that from young receivers. On top of that, 3 of his 4 years, he's had less than 5 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't get touchdowns. He doesn't get yak. But in PPR, he will get you targets. I will completely avoid him in half PPR leagues.
Well, absolutely.
But in PPR, I get the reason behind the like. And his ADP is actually not as high as I thought it would be based on the love for Anthony Richardson. But, I mean, he's kind of right where we have him. Like, wide receiver 19 is where he's going. He initially was much higher in our rankings when we first did that. And then we just did some research and just the vibes aren't there. Also, Jonathan Taylor's back, like, and fully healthy. So I just don't see a world where he's a wide receiver 1 at all. He's the only guy in this range where I'm just like, I know for a fact he won't be a wide receiver 1.
I think my problem is the touchdown production more than anything. Like, I just don't see him scoring that many touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Taylor, like you said, Anthony Richardson is a runner. And, of course, he's the number 1 option in any zone of the field. But it's just, it doesn't feel like he gets more than 6, 7. And I think that makes him pretty hard pass because he doesn't get the extra yards after catch either.
Yeah. He's a guy that probably, this is the highest we might view him. He might drop a little bit below these guys. He'll probably stay in the same tier.
Right.
But, I mean, these other guys we're getting much more of based on where they're going. Mm-hmm. And I've had next to no Michael Pittman, and I don't feel bad about it right now.
And then Devontae Smith, we get the first equal on this board. We know that there's another one coming in A.J. Brown, but Devontae Smith actually outperformed A.J. Brown for, last 8 weeks of the season, I believe.
Yeah. Let me pull up those numbers again. So,
yeah. But yeah, we love Devontae Smith. We were happy. We thought that they extended both him and A.J. Brown. They basically paid everybody that they could. They could not pay Jason Kelce, unfortunately, but that would have helped them even more. The Eagles are looking up, and Devontae Smith is a big reason that they can do that.
So Devontae Smith, final 8 weeks of the season, like you said, he was wide receiver 9, 16 points a game. A.J. Brown, wide receiver 14, 15 points a game. not that big of a difference.
No.
But in ADP, one's a first-round pick and one's a third-round pick. Both of them are really good red zone threats. And on top of that, I saw an interesting thing about Kellen Moore and how great his production comes from slot production. And, CeeDee Lamb started to break out with him. And then last year, Keenan Allen, obviously, target hog, right? Well, like the advanced stats, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Devontae Smith has been more productive and successful from the slot compared to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's more on the outside. And so I think that kind of thing, on top of Kellen Moore coming in, more adheres to his style of play. And if that's the case, and if you can promise me 8 targets a game, I feel very good about investing in Devontae Smith.
And we saw the big plays. I mean, I had Devontae Smith on my team, so I watched him a lot.
Yep.
And he had big plays, especially at the end of the year. Like you said, he did disappear for a couple games, but that's okay when you randomly go for, 8 for like 140 and like 2 touchdowns. That's always fun. And then talking about a different Moore, we got DJ Moore. We talked about him a little bit, the Chicago guy. He's the deep threat. He's an electrifying player. He's been an electrifying player since Carolina. And I just love talent, and he has a ton of it. And so, yeah, I'm excited about him. I'm excited about Keenan Allen.
DJ Moore has been very consistent. He had 3 previous years of 1,100 yards plus, right? Okay. Before last year, and we're talking Carolina days, 135 targets, 118, 163, 118. Problem is, he was 4 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns. He had one with 8 touchdowns, but that was his worst receiving year. He had less than 900 yards. So it basically evened out to where he was the 25th best receiver fantasy-wise for 4 straight years. And then last year, because Darnell Mooney played poorly, Justin Fields couldn't stay on the field, and then also is not a high-volume passer. But by default, they had no one else to throw to, and he just got it all. 96 catches, 1,300 yards, and I believe he finished as wide receiver 7. Top of my head, let me see. But regardless, we really like him, and the thing is, I think he's more tied, like, whatever you think the upside is with Caleb Williams, it correlates more with DJ Moore.
Right.
Because if you think that Caleb Williams is going to have an okay season, 3,500 yards, less than 20 touchdowns, I think it is a big detriment to where DJ Moore is going because he's a 3rd-round pick. We've seen him in low touchdown production years that he doesn't return ADP value. But if you think that Caleb Williams is going to go over 4,000, he's going to break the franchise rookie touchdown record, which is very reasonable, and we're very high on him. Positive leverage on him against the field. That helps him more than it does Keenan Allen.
Right, exactly. And I think that, the deep threat, if you said 1,100 yards, that didn't return ADP. 1,100 yards didn't return ADP. You need those touchdowns. You need those things. So that's absolutely exactly how you should look at it. And then we're going to move to tier 3. These are the exciting players with uncomfortable ADPs. Chris Olave, very uncomfortable with that. I'm going to be honest. I'm okay with 16. I'm not okay with 11.5. That is way too high. There's a reason that we have such a hard time in the end of the 2nd round trying to find receivers that we like.
Why?
Because why would I want Chris Olave with still Derek Carr? He's the deep threat, and Derek Carr doesn't throw it like that. So it's just, I don't see how he doesn't repeat what he did last year.
Yeah.
Like that's it. And I don't think that.
Perfectly fine low-end wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
High-end wide receiver 3, but last year, 87 catches, 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, and that's probably where he's going to be. And what was that last year? Wide receiver 20, and he's going at the 1-2 turn now on best ball drafts. Like before Drake London, I've seen sometimes before Jonathan Taylor and
Marvin Harrison.
I've seen a couple, but overall, his ADP is still lower, but he's basically a top 15 pick now, and that's not what I'm doing.
No, absolutely not. So, and then let's just get away from that and go to Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is a interesting player, obviously, right now, and everything will change based on him. But if he stays with San Francisco, He is probably the number one receiver there, but there are so many mouths to feed, and that's why he is not as high as he has on ADP. We'd probably see him as a mid-second rounder, basically. And right now he's going 18, so mid-first round, or second round, I mean. So, I'm sorry, mid-third rounder. I apologize. We see him as a mid-third rounder. He's going mid-second round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I mean, with him, it's just kind of, he was right as a friend. Him and Debo both straddled being a wide receiver 1 last year, wide receiver 12 overall, wide receiver 14. Debo had the higher points per game. Obviously missed a couple games. But Brandon Ayuk, I think, is a better fit with Brock Purdy, what he likes to do. But the problem, like you said, so many mouths to feed. But if we see a game where CMC is down or Kittle's down, I think his upside goes much higher than Debo's in terms of, I think Debo's much safer to get his typical 15. But then Brandon Ayuk can, if you can promise him 11 targets, he will produce with those, which Debo can as well. They should probably be right next to each other, and we're different. They're in different tiers. But we also don't know for certain if Brandon Ayuk is going to be there.
Right. And that will change all of our rankings based on this area, of course, and it'll change with Ricky Pearsall even, it'll bring him up. And then moving up to Nico Collins, the number 2 guy for let's just group them together, Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins. Basically, they're 2 spots apart, and they should be. We don't know who will be number 1, but we do know what style of football they play. One is really good at catching the ball in the red zone, scoring touchdowns in Nico Collins. You might have double-digit touchdowns. That's kind of the idea. And then Stephon Diggs is going to be your most consistent player all around the field. He could also have double-digit touchdowns, which is kind of crazy. And that's kind of why I think he's a little bit higher than Nico Collins.
Yeah, I mean, with Nico, I think similar to Tank Dell, we kind of got to slow our roll in terms of just boost him like he's going to be the next big thing. I mean, his first 2 years, obviously poor quarterback play, but guess what? A lot of these other guys have had tough quarterback play. My second team growing up has been Houston, and I've had to witness Andre Johnson have a Hall of Fame career with what he had to go through. Sage Rosenfels and etc. And DeAndre Hopkins, when he was in Houston, same exact thing. Like, he did not get better. So, like, about a good 12-year sample size of just Hall of Fame receiver, but still was a wide receiver 1, top 5 in their peaks. So you can't just give me he had bad production, and then that's why he had less than 500 yards and less than 3 touchdowns. Like, you got to produce regardless. He had his breakout year last year. It was more so later in the season when Tank Dell did go down.
Right.
So it's more unknown for me. It's a tough range. He's going in the second round now. It's pricey, but it kind of justifies itself a little bit because, like we said earlier, CJ Stroud's ADP is kind of lower. And if you like Houston stacks, we've done those on a couple of our videos. It's fun and easy to get to, but you got to invest really early, and you basically got to double up fast. And that's just going to be your construction, and you're going to live and die by it.
And we do. And I feel comfortable with those picks, though. But one thing I will say about Nico Collins versus Stephon Diggs, I love betting on talent, and I know who I think is more talented.
Yeah.
I know who has been more talented for a long time. And Nico Collins is a guy similar to, how we talked about Rashid Rice. He's a guy that really didn't have a challenge for targets to me. Tank Dell was a fifth or fourth round receiver, I believe.
I think he was late third.
Was it late? Okay, yeah. So yeah, but he's not a first, second round receiver. Dalton Schultz is just an okay tight end, and Noah Brown was like the other guy at times. It's like he was the only guy in town to me. You know what I mean? And now Stephon Diggs comes in, and he is the talent to back it up.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time with it.
In 4, I'm pulling up Stephon Diggs' numbers, right? And so when he got traded to Minnesota, he was always a Pro Bowl level receiver, but he took the next step when he went to Buffalo and was Josh Allen's number 1.
Right.
His worst year, he had 154 targets. 166, 164, 154, and 160. And he complained he wasn't getting the ball enough.
Well, they get more targets in Houston. Just saying.
Yeah.
There are going to be more targets to go around.
There is more targets to go around. And so I'm not saying he's going to get up to those 160 and then have 100-plus receptions. But his worst year, he had 8 touchdowns. His worst year, he had 1,180 yards. And, he's played at least 16 games in all 4 of those years. He's consistently durable. And I know he's getting up there in age, but he's only 29 now. Or, no, he's 30 now. Going to his age 31 season. But again, I just don't. You don't trade a second-round pick and then void his contract and just say, "Oh, I'm not going to give you the ball."
Right.
And that's why we hate Tank Dell. Him and Nico, if you prefer Nico, cool. But I feel more comfortable in Stephon Diggs at the very least being the wide receiver 2. He's the safest of the 3.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. At the very worst, he's the wide receiver 2 in that offense. And a lot of people view him as wide receiver 3. I just think that there's no way if he's on the field.
His name is Stephon Diggs, guys.
Yeah.
Just don't forget that, right? Like he's Minnesota Miracle.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget that one. And then he goes to a offense that doesn't throw the ball as much as he did when he was in Minnesota. And he does 1,180 is his worst year. Yeah, okay. 8 touchdowns is his worst year. That means that he had multiple double-digit touchdown years.
10, 11, 8, and 8.
Yeah.
Over 100 catches every year. 2 seasons over 1,400 yards.
I think we're overthinking.
We're overthinking and it's not that his ADP is too low because early third round is probably where I would have predicted he would have gone, like the 2-3 turn. But it's just the fact that Tank Dell I've seen drafted before him.
Well, yeah.
And Nico is just around before him, and I just don't see that gap, and that's why he's above us because we're taking the stand that. Again, one of these guys will fail unless C.J. Stroud has a historical season. And my bet is that he is the least likely to do so.
Right.
If he's healthy.
But then you're also looking at the rankings and you're like, he's behind Chris Olave by 7 positions. He's behind Drake London. And I'm like, there's no way.
I see the path, but it's way too scary.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we'll
Let's talk about Drake London.
Yeah, I mean, again, we talk about high-value quarterbacks. We talked in our other episode about Atlanta bringing over Kirk Cousins. Well, it is an Achilles injury, but you expect that it's going to be a more proficient offense. I think that they will ease him back a little bit in terms of he's not going to be throwing it 50 times a game.
Fair.
So, how is that going to happen? He's always had really solid wide receiver 1 production. We just mentioned Stephon Diggs. And then also you got to talk about Adam Thielen. He had his historical year. A couple seasons, and then obviously most recently Justin Jefferson. So, he by default is the clearly most talented receiver in that room.
Oh yeah.
But he is going about 30% of the time. He's a first-round pick.
I know. I've seen him go at 7.
I saw him go at 6 today.
Wow.
6.
Well, that means that who did they pass on?
Above Amon-Ra and JJ.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And again, I get the path. He's so right high. At our. If you look, he's 13th overall. So I mean, we have him as basically a fringe wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2.
Right.
And we just see no value. And it doesn't really show that in the wide receiver rank because everybody has him wide receiver 12. But most people have him as a top 15 pick. And we're just like, I'd rather you be in the 3rd round. And,
absolutely.
And so it'll be interesting in redraft. I think they're a little lower on him. Yeah, ESPN, he's actually 39. Excellent value.
Deal.
That won't stay there, though. Yahoo's 28. I can deal with that.
Yeah.
But, again, our most recent, we haven't updated this because they do it every Wednesday. But DraftKings and Underdog, 15th and 14th, respectively. And that's rising. So he's going to eventually pass guys like Marvin Harrison. He's already passed Devontae Adams, who we haven't talked about yet. And again, I see the reason behind it, but I'm a little gun shy this early, especially with the quarterback coming off a major.
And then Mike Evans, he's one of our more positively differentials at this range because when you get closer to 1, they get shorter.
Yeah.
But he's 3.6 higher. That has to do with the fact that he's just so consistent. This range, he'll be very consistent this year. He'll probably have over 1,000 yards again. Won't be surprised by that. He's the touchdown guy in that offense. Baker played really well and probably can continue doing that. Mm-hmm. And I just don't see a way where you're looking at his 1,000-yard stats. I can tell it already.
Yeah, because there hasn't been one that's been below that.
Ever.
He historically had a 10-year stretch of 1,000 yards, and never been done before. And it's crazy. And on top of that, because we're also looking at upside, because once you get in this range, it's touchdowns. 3 of the last 4 years, he had at least 13 touchdowns.
And he's 32.
Yeah. And
I'll take it.
I was pleasantly surprised that he re-signed with Baker Mayfield. I think that helps. Again, we talked about with Chris Godwin in our other video, or part 1. Go check that out. We like him because of the last 6 weeks of the season and the stretch of games that they have. One of the easier schedules. They're a 500 team that should be competing with the worst teams and the best teams.
Right.
In terms of production. I don't see them getting blown out in multiple situations. Everybody can be blown out, but it feels very safe there where he's going. He's going in the 3rd round. I'll take that every day.
Yep. And then let's jump to tier 2, wide receiver 1s with a tad more risk. Devontae Adams. We all know what the risk is. It's quarterback. Mm-hmm. Quarterback is the risk because it's not talent. Talent is not the problem. And so sometimes you have to bet on talent. And we're not sure what's going to happen with the Raiders quarterback situation, but there are a lot of players like we talked about this with Brock Bowers and Jacoby Meyer. We're higher on the Raiders right now because of their ADPs.
Yeah.
Devontae Adams is going behind everybody in that last list, basically.
He's one of the few that we're getting a lot of that is basically right where we have him.
Right.
Overall, like 15, 16 range, that's where he's going. But like everybody else behind him in the same similar tier is above him. And so it's just like, I don't want to draft Nico Collins every time above Devontae.
Right.
And Chris Olave and Drake London and these guys. So I'd rather just bet on talent, like you said. Sometimes when it's a tiebreaker, you just bet on talent. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. If he is traded, and for some reason, like they start off slow and he becomes just trade bait, he's going to be a hot commodity that if, say, he goes to Dallas, for example.
Yeah.
That's just a void of and that's not even a homer thing, but it's just a situation where they're just looking for a wide receiver 1 or 2, but there's just volume potential. He's going to walk in and just instantly top 8 receiver.
I don't see how he doesn't get 9 to 12 targets a game in the Raiders offense when they have to find somebody to throw the ball at.
And again, people are like rising up. Michael Pittman we talked about, and Gardner Minshew is the one that got him there. It wasn't Anthony Richardson. And so if Gardner Minshew's the quarterback, that works. And if it's Aiden O'Connell, well, he built rapport with him last year.
Yeah.
Basically, the majority of the season it was Aiden. So it's very safe to put him at wide receiver 10. I don't expect him to be a top 5 receiver.
Right.
But I also I think a lot has to go wrong for him to not be a wide receiver 2.
Wide receiver 2 or 1?
Or like a low-end wide receiver 2. Okay. I think that's his floor, and I think there's a lot of other guys that have a much lower floor.
I think he's a top 15 receiver, is what I think you're
getting at,
and I think that's fair. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., he's basically going at the 1-2 turn, which is great. Highest rookie ever at the position, but one of the more warranted rookies, especially based on track record of other rookies. Marvin Harrison is one of the best prospects to ever play the position coming out of college, and now he gets to be the number 1 option for Kyler Murray. And there's not really a set number 2 option. Like Trey McBride is their set number 2 option, and after that, it's like, is it Michael Wilson? Is it Zay Jones? Is it
either way? Neither one's
Greg Dortch.
Yeah, none of them will be over 700 yards.
Right.
It's like if any of them get above that threshold, like it's considered a miracle, and ADP wise, a great value. But he's walking into 120, 30 targets. I don't know how instantly he will get 12 targets a game, but at the end of the season, that's what he will be eventually getting if he stays healthy. And Kyler Murray, when he's been healthy, has supported top 5 wide receivers. With DeAndre Hopkins, he had a few seasons with him. And so, I think he's back to form, reasonable schedule, all that good stuff. We like him, but again, similar to Devontae, he's going right where we have him. And we thought we would be getting a higher value just because he's a rookie.
Yeah. I will say though, when you're playing redraft, buy the dip. He's a guy you buy the dip on. Yeah. He's the Jahmyr Gibbs type of buy the dip.
Exactly. So yeah, let me pull those up real quick.
Well, I got Jahmyr Gibbs at 30 last year.
Right. Which especially like rookie running backs is something you really want to target. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you look at Marvin Harrison, we have him overall 14, ESPN 25. Mm-hmm. So it's like he's going at the 2-3 turn, much more palpable.
Oh yeah. And then AJ Brown, the other side of the tandem for the Philadelphia Eagles, he's actually lower in our listing in our rankings, but it's one spot basically. So mm-hmm. I mean, he's behind Garrett Wilson basically, and that's the difference.
So, I mean, I'd like to group them all together because ADP wise, everything Puka, Garrett, and AJ Brown are boom, boom, boom in every single thing essentially. Not necessarily in that order, but they're all the trio there. The thing is with AJ is that him and Puka, yes, they both have competition, mm-hmm. but AJ Brown not only has even more, he's got a quarterback with rushing touchdown upside, so that caps that. And then also he has another receiver that last year at the end of the year, when it's money time and you're making the playoffs, you're trying to win championships, you got outperformed by.
Right.
And that doesn't mean he didn't play well. He still averaged 15 a game the last 8-week stretch that we talked about. But with Puka, in spite of Cooper Kupp, having those inconsistent, but then when he had those boom weeks, Puka still had the boom weeks.
Right.
And then we went to the playoffs, and I remember the wild card game, and we had our 3-game slate, and we were talking about who to target, and I was like, I'm going to trust Cooper Kupp in the playoffs. Yeah. We're going to go to him. And then Puka Nakua's first playoff game, 9 for 181. Okay, I was wrong. Like he's already here.
Louise.
He's already here. He's already there. He's already consistent.
Right.
And then with Garrett Wilson, it's all tied together with Aaron Rodgers, because with him last year he had a really solid year, but he had 3 touchdowns, mm-hmm. and it was worst quarterback play imaginable. Worst case scenario for him was the first series of the game, Aaron Rodgers going down. That killed us because we had a lot of him at the 1-2 turn last year. His ADP is basically the exact same, and we just are continuing to believe in the upside. If he just has a quarterback that can throw in the ball, because he, compared to the other two, has no competition.
Right.
His competition is Mike Williams, 30-year-old off of ACL and then multiple injury-prone years.
Right.
That's it. Okay. And Malachi Corley,
not magic guy.
Maybe on a weekly showdown slate he'll pay off, but
Tyler Conklin.
No, it's Brees and the Garrett Wilson show. They're going to get 75% of the production, it feels like, in this offense. And it just kind of is tied to if him or Tyrod Taylor can just get enough targets and scoring drives going to where he can pay off his ADP right now, which is a round 1 grade.
Right. And me personally, I probably would have Garrett Wilson above Puka Nacua. I'm on that train. I'm with that. I'm ready to. I did it last year, like we talked about. We did it last year. I know that there's reasons why. That's why people are drafting Drake London over him, things like that, because they don't believe in Aaron Rodgers. Well, if you don't believe in Aaron Rodgers, don't draft Drake London, because you shouldn't believe in Kirk Cousins.
Right.
But that's my thing. So I think that
I essentially wanted to be even with Puka and Garrett Wilson, and mm-hmm. then have a little bit less of AJ Brown. And right now, that's kind of where I'm at. Where right. It's like I'm like 12% Puka, I'm like 18% Garrett Wilson, and I'm like 6% AJ Brown. Which to me, I could probably get a little bit more AJ sprinkles, but also, there's other, like the Jahmyr Gibbs is in that range also.
Well, we did a video with AJ Brown double stack with Jalen Hurts, which was good. One thing I will say about, I'm getting more Garrett Wilson past ADP, so I'm taking him there.
That's true.
And so
usually Puka, I don't see Puka falling out of the first. So even though Puka is on some big boards below Garrett Wilson, he, in terms of the best ball ADPs, is staying kind of consistently in the 9 to 10 range. Right. And he's not really falling. Whereas Garrett Wilson, on occasion, you'll see somebody get Drake London or Jahmyr Gibbs in front of him, and JT or a quarterback for some reason, and that pushes him maybe into the early second round. AJ Brown, I have gotten like 1 share of him in the second round. He's pretty consistently in the 10 to 11 as well. So
Yeah, if you get the 12th pick, you're hoping that Garrett Wilson falls to you, basically, and that has happened more often than anybody else, at least. And then jumping to tier 1, you just got your target alphas. I mean, Justin Jefferson, possibly, most likely the best wide receiver in football. You can make some cases for some other guys, but he has got to be in the conversation. Sam Darnold's throwing the ball to him, and T.J. Hawkinson being out will help his production, hopefully. Or maybe actually at the same time, it could hurt it just for the fact that, with T.J. Hawkinson there, there's people that take the ball away. Think about, other people on the field. I see that the rankings are actually kind of weird because, like, Amon-Ra is lower ranked on average than Justin Jefferson. And I didn't expect that. I expected Amon-Ra to be above Justin Jefferson for sure.
Yeah, I definitely thought that with Sam Darnold, and if you want to say J.J. McCarthy, sure, it doesn't matter. That situation would drop Justin Jefferson to the end of the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still a top 5 pick pretty consistently. He's, of these 5, the one, if he is going to fall 2 spots, it's more likely than not him.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, people are just kind of betting on the talent. And listen, if you have one of these guys ranked above the others, like, don't come at our throats. We love all of them. We want shares of all of them. Like, just pick one of these guys and build your team around them because you can't go wrong. Only injuries can bring them down. They're all going to average over 20 points a game as long as they're healthy.
Right.
The thing with Justin Jefferson is we're talking about touchdown upside also, because touchdown, once you get to this point, separator. So I could see a world where he has his typical 150 targets, 100 receptions, 1,300 yards, and like 5-6 touchdowns. Whereas Amon-Ra, 10-plus touchdowns last year. I think Jamar Chase is capable of flirting with 20.
Right. No, yeah.
Tyreek Hill, 10 touchdowns essentially every year. CeeDee Lamb, 10 to 15 is going to be his sweet spot, especially with no competition. So that's kind of the separator for me and why he's 5 instead of 1, because I don't think his peak year is this year. I think he's going to have a great, just easy year. If you want him, cool. But you're not going to stack him. I know that.
That's what
it's going to be a one-off.
Yeah.
Whereas Detroit, you can get some double stacks and feel really good about it. You can get some double with Cincinnati.
Yes.
Miami's got a difficult schedule, but it's really easy to get to Tyreek Hill. And then at the 2-3 turn with the 3rd pick, going with Jalen Waddle, and then waiting until the 9th or 10th for Tua. And then CeeDee Lamb with Dak and Jake Ferguson and Zeke or whatever. Really easy to get stacks with every one of those guys. And then Justin Jefferson, he's going to be your standalone guy. That's totally fine. But again,
know how you're making your roster. Yeah, like if you're going to go Justin Jefferson, know that you have to find another guy or another way to stack your quarterback. That could be doing the opposite, where you get the quarterback first and go and make Josh Allen, and then going Coleman or however you want to do it. But you just have to know that's coming. Amon-Ra, 14 games in a dome.
Yep.
Lots of games that are going to be neutral weather, making it easier for them, even knowing they're in Detroit. That's a big thing. That's really big in fantasy. We found, ask Buffalo how it is to play when it's freezing cold outside and windy and all. So Amon-Ra gets that part of it, and of course he's been very good in general.
Yeah, I mean, he's as safe as they can get. He's got 30-point upside. He's got like 15 to 20-point floor.
Yeah,
it's great where he's at. Great game environments, like you said. Nothing can go wrong, and despite having several mouths to feed in the offense, it runs through Amon-Ra between the 20s.
Right.
And then when you get to the pay dirt, that was the thing last year. Was I was wondering, with the 1-2 punch that they have, are they going to just like feed, and then just run it when they get to the red zone and inside the 5? And no, they're throwing bubble screens to him at the 3-yard line, and slants and go across and back shoulder fades to him when they get down to the 5. So it's like, if you have that in your arsenal too, and you're just going to get every 3rd down reception,
right,
you're going to be moving the chains and 2-minute drill, great environment. Like, there's nothing you can say wrong about him. And that's what's great. And that's why he's vaulted all the way into these tiers. He's probably the least talented overall player between these guys. Okay. But volume-wise, when we're talking from a fantasy perspective, he's right there with every one of these guys.
Oh, yeah. And the touchdowns upside, like you said, that even keeps him higher. That puts him even higher. Jamar Chase, though, are my personal favorite wide receiver in football right now. I mean, he's, to me, the best football player, best wide receiver in football. opportunities come with quarterback play, and hopefully his quarterback can stay healthy. Mm-hmm. Like you said, he could flirt with 20 touchdowns. That is not even gonna that. That didn't even affect. That's easily a real thing because he is that good.
I don't. So if we're talking wide receiver rankings, upside peak season for any of these guys, there's certain guys that are capable of getting the 2,000 yard threshold to break the Calvin Johnson.
Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill, maybe CD, Justin Jefferson for sure can flirt with 2,000 yards. I don't think he's there, and I don't think he ever will be. But I think he's capable of flirting with 20 touchdowns, which we haven't really seen in a long time. I know Randy Moss and the Patriots 07 season, he broke the record. But I don't think since then we've seen 20 touchdowns from a receiver. I have to look that up to verify. I think we've come close with Julio about 17.
Okay.
But and then Antonio Brown, of course, as well, getting 15 a couple times. But yeah, that's his upside is the touchdowns, and he's had multiple 50-point games under his belt, 4 touchdown games, and 3 touchdown games, and
I think 1,500 yards is not out of the realm, though. I think that's
for sure.
Reasonable.
Yeah, if he's a 17, 16, let's be conservative and say a 16 game is a fully healthy season, even though there's 17. Plus, fantasy-wise, there's only 16 games in the season anyways.
Right.
1,500 yards is probably a solid, reasonable prediction if you know that he's playing 15, 16 games. But the touchdowns, it's minimum 10.
Oh, yeah.
And then maximum, we don't know. That's how much rapport and upside he has with Joe Burrow.
I mean, when he was in college, he had 1,600 yards and I want to say 20 touchdowns. But
20 touchdowns.
I want to make sure.
Yeah,
he broke. That
was his sophomore year.
Oh, I know. It was amazing. And then he didn't play his junior year because of COVID. He was the best.
Me too. He was that good.
Yeah, him and Marvin Harrison, they competed for the best wide receiver prospect I've ever watched and scouted. And there you go. That's why he's up here. Their talent-wise, of course, he's number 3. Don't let it fool you. He could be number 1 very easily.
Right.
And then Tyreek Hill, he's just probably going to do it again. As long as he's healthy and he doesn't talk about this retirement stuff and all the weird stuff, he's the fastest, most capable separator in football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. First ballot Hall of Famer, nothing to take away from him. Yeah. The only difference with him in this tier, he's the one that's exiting his prime, while everybody else is entering their prime. They're all 25, 26 and younger, and he's approaching 30. And then also with Tua, obviously he has the upside to lead the league in touchdowns, but he's injury prone. Not a great schedule to end the year for high passing volume environment situations, like you said. A lot of cold weather games, and we saw the cold weather take an impact the second half of the year with him. His style of play warrants more injuries than he's had, but that's on the board as well because you can't just discount that won't happen being a 30-year speedster receiver.
Right.
But yeah, can't go wrong. Really easy to stack. You have to basically have a top 4 pick to get him because he doesn't really fall. As far as I can see in the best ball drafts, he's consistently the wide receiver 2 overall. Mm-hmm. And, that's just kind of where we have him. He's 2, and it's just if you want to pair him with Tua, go right ahead. Won't stop you. But there's the exit in the prime factor. There's the injuries factor for both him and Tua. That's just kind of where we view it.
Yeah, I went to look to see what my ownership on all of these guys were. I have 7% Justin Jefferson, and it's all about what pick you get, of course. But I have 7% Justin Jefferson, 7% CD, 13% Tyreek. Let's see. I know I have 20% Jamar Chase.
That's awesome.
So,
that's a great number for somebody that's consistently a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
So I've taken a stand because I actually haven't really gotten the second pick overall or the 4th. It's really been the 1st and then the 3rd. So really, most of the time, it's I have to decide between him and Jamar, and I guess I'm letting my feelings get in the way because we both love Jamar Chase so much that I want more ownership because we're not often getting the 4th or 5th pick.
Right.
So I'm similar to CMC being underweight when I had the first pick and I go CD to get more exposure to him.
Mm-hmm.
If I have the third pick or the fourth pick, I'm doing the same thing with Jamar Chase. That's what I did last year when it was Jamar versus Justin Jefferson.
Neither of them panned out, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
That's just kind of the gamble you got to take with some of these guys. I don't want to just have 10% of every single one. Right. I want to be a little bit overweight on some, underweight on the others. Like, I want a bunch of Amon-Ra. I want a bunch of Jamar. I want a bunch of CD, Tyreek. I want some, but I don't have to go crazy with it. Mm-hmm. And then Justin Jefferson, he's probably my biggest. Is he my biggest fade in the first round? He's one of them. Mm-hmm. One of the two or three guys that I want to have the least of all of them. Like Breece Hall, I want some shares of Breece Hall. I want Bijan. CMC by default is my lowest exposed because I won't ever have the first pick, and when I do, we're going receiver because of strategy. Right. And then AJ Brown, I want some of. I want Puka. I want Garrett. I want Jameer. It's just you can't just have some of everybody. We're not the show that's just going to be the highest ADP. We're just going to draft them and figure it out. Yeah,
well, I was actually going to say I was looking to see where Garrett Wilson was because I wasn't looking for him. I was looking for the top 5 guys. I have 27% of him, and that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, I have about 20, so just
exactly.
Really strong about it. But again, we acknowledge the high risk that comes with.
Of course. And then let's talk about CeeDee Lamb. Last guy on the list. I mean, Dak is fed and had been really good during the season, actually. And I know that there's a lot of hate out there for Dak, but Dak puts up great numbers for receivers. And right now, CeeDee Lamb is getting 12 targets a game, it feels like. It feels like every time he's there on the field and they're throwing the ball, CeeDee's getting the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he led the league in receptions last year, 135. Receiving yards, 1,750. He finally broke the 10-touchdown barrier. Had 180 targets.
That's awesome.
It's just, you can't get any better. And on top of that, he is freaking entering not a contract year, but this is the option year that they're going to have to really extend him. They should have already signed him. But that's besides the point. Regardless, he's entering his prime. There's no competition for targets in that offense. The only other one is Jake Ferguson as a true consistent target. Brandon Cooks will get the occasional deep ball, whatever. He's going to have 1,700 plus yards as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so everybody remembers, we, as a Raiders fan, took Henry Ruggs over CeeDee Lamb. And then the Broncos took Jerry Jeudy over CeeDee Lamb.
We weren't going receiver, and we were just like, okay, y'all aren't going to.
I had Trayvon Diggs going on the first round. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously, fell to the second round.
That was a great draft. But, yeah, I mean, we saw from the jump that he was the most talented. We had him as our wide receiver 1, I think, overall. Obviously, Justin Jefferson. I'm not sure where we had him compared to Jerry Jeudy.
4th, I want to say, or 5th.
Because I knew we had him above Henry Ruggs.
We did.
But I didn't know, because Jerry Jeudy we were solid on as well.
T. Higgins was the one that was, I think, above Justin Jefferson. That was weird.
Yeah. But either way, regardless.
But Justin Jefferson was the number 2 in that offense. Remember, Jamar Chase was the number 1.
Yep.
And we didn't really know because Jamar Chase was going in that draft. So that was a whole thing, too.
It's a whole thing. But yeah, I mean, he's safe as it gets. It's just, the injuries is the only thing that'll stop him.
Yeah.
He has the volume. He has the schedule late in the year. He has everything you could want on a 10-11 win team that just led the league in scoring to get you your 20 to 25 points every week.
Right. And so that's the end of our rankings. We appreciate y'all coming and hanging out. That's actually the end of all of our rankings for the 1.0.
Yep.
We have released at this point tight ends, quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. There's 60 wide receivers, so we did it in 2 videos. But we appreciate y'all coming and hanging out. Please go like, comment, subscribe. Go check out our socials. We've been really trying to amp them up. Discord's going. I know that Twitter's been going. Instagram's starting. We even did Facebook, so go check it out.
I mean, it's a lot of moving parts that we're trying to kind of put together. We have a great editor that's been doing a lot. Great time for doing that, and Desi's been a great contributor. You'll see on some videos as well that will be coming up soon. But essentially, 4-man squad. A lot of the back end of stuff is what we're doing, and it's a lot to do while also juggling full-time jobs. But we're really grinding, trying to start this up. I mean, it's been a crazy journey through these first 4 months, and we've seen a lot of highs that I didn't expect this early. And I think as we're it's a little early in the fantasy season, so it hasn't really revved up yet. I think our traffic's going to start going and going, and we're going to just kind of have another viral video or two that'll kind of bump up our subs. We're going to get over that monetized goal of 500 subs. That's our goal to do that by the end or the start of next year's draft. And I think it's attainable, and it's going to be doing that with you guys and interacting with us, spreading the word, spreading the love, and joining the community. Because again, this isn't a we tell you what to do and then you figure it out. This is y'all tell us what to do. I mean, this is we've said it before. We're a Cowboy and a Raider fan, but there's we don't have a ton of Philly fans. We don't have a ton of this fan, that fan. Like, we need perspectives. It's fun. Our power rankings video, there was so many comments and different fans of Cincinnati and Detroit and all these people that it's just we're not around. And so it's a different perspective. It's a great energy, and I just want more of it. And that's why it's so exciting.
Yeah. I don't think I've learning in the last 4 months has been crazy. Just the amount of stuff we've learned, how to, create these slides, how to, work on different things, how to learn, put this whole thing together. And just, it's been a huge learning experience. And I mean, we're just going to keep learning, obviously, but we put so much time and energy into this that it's made it so worth it when everybody comments and subscribes and talks with us, because then we think we're doing the right things. Then it makes it worth it, because otherwise, we would just be talking to ourselves. And that's cool, because we can talk football all the time, but we want to do this so that we can have conversations with people that have a difference of opinion, and we can see, and Q&As and things like that. Those are fun to us. We want to be a part of those.
Yeah. Even though a lot of the stuff we've done out so far, it's informational. Well, once we get into the nitty gritty and all the information, and it's just like our cards are played. Now let's see the hand be dealt. We're going to have a lot more fun stuff to do, and competitions and contests and, pick'ems and all that fun stuff. That's what I'm looking forward to, those kinds of ideas. And it's just with these intros and a lot of downtime, there's not really time to get into that because we have to do the research now. But once we have that product in front of us, that's when we start to get fun and kind of more relaxed, laid back, and kind of do some fun competitions.
We'll have more live streams and things like that where y'all get to be more interactive.
Every Sunday morning that's gonna be I think insane. Kill.
It's gonna be insane, and I'm excited. So, so we appreciate y'all being with us, and as you can tell, we hope that this grows, and we want we get the most out of it by being with y'all and hanging out with y'all. So
watch our other videos, like, comment, subscribe, follow us, do it all. We will see you guys next time.